Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister likes to blame the world for the problems that he caused. He doubled the debt, doubled the rent, doubled mortgage payments, doubled the needed down payment. And now he's doubling down on the same costly mistakes that have made life unaffordable for Canadians.
My oh my, ever since these guys got back from their 2-week break, these question periods have been a little bit more fiery than normal, and today's was no exception. We had Pierre and Trudeau going toe-to-toe, as Trudeau had to be there since it was Wednesday, and it all started with Pierre talking about a costly orgy. But Pierre also did something that I've never really seen him do before, where he looked directly at the camera as if he was talking to each and every single Canadian out there.
Who pays? That's right. Who pays for this latest $50 billion orgy of spending by this costly Prime Minister? We know who won't pay. It won't be those with trust funds that protect their millions of inheritance like the Prime Minister, nor the billionaires that invite him to their private Caribbean islands. They'll hide their money. You know who will pay? You will pay. You, the welder or waitress who can't pay your mortgage because he's inflated the mortgage rates. You will pay because he carbon taxed your food and now you can't feed your kids. Why should you pay for him? Yeah.
My comment still applies. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it is interesting to see the lengths to which the Leader of the Opposition will go to avoid saying that he is choosing to stand with the ultra-wealthy, against the middle class, against young Canadians. When we first got elected and raised taxes on the wealthiest 1% to lower them for the middle class, the Conservative Party and that leader voted against it. We're asking for the wealthiest in this country, the wealthiest 0.1%, to pay more in taxes so we can support the middle class, so we can restore the dream, particularly for young people, of home ownership, of a brighter future that the world is taking away from people all over the world.
Trudeau is just so out of touch, it's ridiculous. Here he is talking about the 1%ers, the 0.1%ers, and you can even hear the bench across saying, that's you, you're talking about yourself, which is true, because even though we got the carbon tax hike on April 1st, they all got a salary hike, all the MPs and the Prime Minister on April 1st as well. And if we take a look at the political salaries of world leaders, Trudeau is 6th place. He's 6th in the world in terms of salary earning out of all the leaders. Yet here he is trying to act like he's all on our level, saying, oh yeah, we need to target those 1%ers and get them to do more for Canadians. Dude, that's you. You need to start doing more for Canadians because you're not doing what you need to be doing. And Pierre calls him out on this, rightfully so, and says, dude, you're a trust fund baby.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
When will this Prime Minister realize that he's not worth the cost and that repeating the same thing 9 times and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, what the Leader of the Opposition is saying is that he stands with the ultra-wealthy 0.1% in this country, and everyone else is on their own, because that's what he would do as he slashes programs, as he slashes investments, as he doesn't build the homes necessary, as he doesn't have a plan to fight climate change and create good jobs, as he has stood against affordability measures, as he stands against seniors getting dental care, Mr. Speaker. He is choosing to stand with the ultra-wealthy while we are investing in Canadians and building a stronger future that is fair for everyone.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he is the ultra-wealthy. He hid his family fortune in a tax-sheltered trust fund so he wouldn't have to pay the same tax as everyone else. He vacations with the ultra-wealthy on their private islands in tax-preferred locations where they can hide their money and avoid paying their fair share here in Canada. And now he's paying off the ultra-wealthy by spending $54 billion on debt interest, more than on health care. Why give more money to the ultra-wealthy bankers and bondholders instead of the nurses and doctors?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, this is a budget that invests in fairness for every generation by asking the ultra-wealthy to pay a little more. And, Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party is choosing to stand with the status quo, stand with the ultra-wealthy, instead of saying, yes, we need to invest in young people. We need to build more houses. We need to support seniors with dental care. We need to create more spaces in childcare. We need to deliver hundreds of dollars a month tax-free in a disability benefit. These are the things we will be doing. Those are the things that they stand against.
Now, you would think after this many years in office, 8-9 years, that they would have a grasp on some of these things, but apparently it seems like they have a grasp on none of them, and they're still trying to go forward with them. And when you're hearing him talking about dental care for elderlies, I think somebody across yelled, they got dentures, which was pretty funny. But even him talking about the $10 a day daycare, yeah, it's a great concept, but guess what? There's not enough spaces. And even Vashi yesterday questioned Freeland on this in regards to the budget when it came out, and said, listen, there's waiting lists of like 8-9 months.
And in 7 provinces and territories, it's already $10 a day. We can get big things done in Canada, and we are committed to doing it.
And I'm not intimating in any way that you haven't done significant things. And I think, for example, the daycare example is a good one. The cost for a lot of Canadians has gone down, but the wait list to get in is growing at a rapid rate. Many people in this city, for example, can't get into a daycare spot for another 8 or 9 months. And that brings me back to my original point, which is, can Canadians actually have confidence that you're going to execute? One of the lines you've been saying over the past 2 weeks is, Canada feels like a place where things aren't working. After 8 years in office, isn't that your government's fault?
And the short and fast answer to Vashi's question is, yes, it is. But don't tell Trudeau this, because if he finds out who's actually been running the country for the past decade, he might not be too happy with the status quo, as Pierre's going to point out here.
You to know that the status quo is unacceptable. That Canada has become an unfair country where young people, an entire generation, cannot afford a home and families cannot afford food. And if he finds out who's been running this place for the last 9 years, there will be hell to pay. Will the Prime Minister complete his investigation and tell us who's been in charge for the last decade?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
When we first got elected, we raised taxes on the wealthy.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when we got elected, first thing we did was raise taxes on the wealthiest 1% and lower them for the middle class, a measure that the Conservative Party voted against. We've continued to invest in young people, invest in standing up a national housing strategy after the previous government had completely ignored housing, and the former housing minister, who is now leader of the opposition, was responsible for creating exactly 6 affordable homes in his time as minister. We've continued to invest, and we're going to continue to make sure that the economy is fair for every generation, and that means asking the wealthiest to pay a little more so we can put more money in the pockets of the middle class.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has got to stop getting his facts from his incompetent housing minister's Twitter account. Yes. This is the same guy who, as immigration minister, lost track of 1 million people. When I was housing minister, we built 92,782 new apartment units with an average rent of $973. How many apartments will the Prime Minister build at the price of $972 a month this year?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, our housing plan is the most ambitious and comprehensive in Canada's history and will unlock close to 4 million homes by 2031. This happens because we're working with municipalities, we're working with provinces to increase the levels of ambition. We've put out the most comprehensive and ambitious housing plan this country has ever seen because we know that making sure that young people can afford a home, making sure we change the way homes are built in this country is about building a stronger future for everyone in this country. That's what fairness for every generation looks like. That's what this government is focused on while they're focused on cuts.
Now, I find it funny that he's talking about fairness for all when all he's been doing lately is spouting about these carbon tax rebate check that we got on Monday. Well, fast forward 3 days later, and tonight in Ontario, the gas just went up 14 cents, making it almost $1.80 a liter. And you should have seen all the gas stations and all the Costco's. The lines were insane. And I don't know about you, but to me, that doesn't sound like something that's fair to all. But in regards to what Pierre was talking about, I remember back in the end of 2014, 2015, beginning of 2015, when I got my apartment, yeah, it was about $950 for an 850 square foot unit. And I just checked it out actually today, and that same unit, or the unit smaller, the studio, is actually going for $1,800, almost $1,900. And so yeah, everything has doubled since Trudeau. But according to his promise since 2015, he's been talking about making things affordable since then.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, we will cut the rent. When I was Minister of Housing, we paid half as much for rent in Canada that we pay today. And on that question of his ambitious housing plan, I decided to read all about it in their 2015 platform. They said, "We will make it easier for Canadians to find an affordable place to call home." That was 9 years ago. Wow. They doubled the cost since that promise was made, and then they repeated the promise yesterday. Why do we expect the same promise with the same programs and the same Prime Minister to be kept this time?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I was in Vancouver a few weeks ago to speak with young people about the fact that we're supporting renters with greater protections and making sure that the money they spend every month on rent actually gets counted in their credit score so they can help get a mortgage on into the future. Our housing plan will unlock 3.87 million new homes by cutting red tape, by reforming zoning, by lowering costs of home building, by using public lands and vacant government offices for housing. We're making it easier to save up for a tax-free for a down payment. We're helping end chronic homelessness and make homes more affordable. We're going to continue doing the work.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Oh, he's going to turn public buildings and land into housing. Wonder where we got that idea. Well, actually, it was, let me quote, "We will conduct an inventory of all federal lands and buildings that could be repurposed and make some of these lands available at low cost for affordable housing." That is from his 2015 budget. And now, 9 years later, he can only point to 13 homes on those public lands. And yesterday, he promised a rapid review of all the federal land portfolios. Rapid review. How rapid? Another 9 years?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we made a choice. We made a choice to invest in Canadians, and that started when we took office because the previous government had not invested in Canadians, continued to choose cuts to services, continued to choose austerity over the kinds of investments that a confident country should be making in its citizens. And that's where we have stepped up, and that's where we are stepping up right now to make sure that young people have the opportunities to build a strong future themselves by asking the wealthiest 0.1% to pay more in taxes. Unfortunately, the Leader of the Opposition continues to stand with the ultra-wealthy while we stand with...
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Named immigration for housing costs and the immigration minister who caused it all. Then he made that minister responsible for housing. Since that time, that minister has a $4 billion housing accelerator that he admits will not build any homes, no specific homes. And in fact, since it began, housing starts have gone down this year and his housing agency says they'll go down next year and the year after that. How is it the Prime Minister can spend $4 billion on a housing accelerator that decelerates home building?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I'm happy to talk about the housing accelerator because it stands in direct contrast with any plan that the Leader of the Opposition has put forward to pick fights with municipalities and provinces on housing. We're actually stepping up with investments that are allowing for more densification, for 4 units as of right, to make sure there's better use of public lands, including by municipalities and provinces, by making sure we're changing the math around building affordable homes to unlock millions of homes over the coming years. This is the work that we're doing right across the country with people who are ambitious about solving the housing crisis. If the Leader of the Opposition doesn't want to help solve it, he needs to keep getting out of the way.
Now, I don't know if this is Trudeau's new thing that he likes to say, just get out of my way, as if he's Mr. Tough Guy, like I said in the other video, but I don't think he realizes that he's the problem and he needs to get out of the way. But don't worry, Pierre is going to let him know in regards to some statistics regarding Canada.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, it was solved when rent was $973 a month, Mr. Speaker, until he came along. But more proof that he is not worth the cost after 9 years. He's blaming the whole world. If the world is to blame for the housing problems in Canada, then why is it that housing here is 50 to 75% more expensive than in the United States? Why is it that housing costs have risen faster than in any other G7 country relative to incomes? Why is it that we have the fewest homes per capita despite having the most land and the most lumber? Why? Is it him?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite well knows that Canada's population is growing faster than our fellow countries around the world, and that is a good thing. It is a good thing that we continue to draw in people to be successful in this country. It is also extremely important that we recognize that even as the world is faced with challenges around inflation, disrupted supply chains, getting over the pandemic, conflicts and shifting geopolitics, Canada is actually on solider footing fiscally than any of our other G7 partners, with a lower debt to GDP ratio, a lower deficit, and a continued focus on creating the jobs and the future that Canadians need.
The Honourable Member for Beloit-Chambly.
Now, I want to take a second to point something out where when Trudeau finishes talking and the camera pans out, you're going to see MP Halan and Landsman showing Pierre something on a cell phone, which makes Pierre cover his face like this, and you're going to see that here.
The Honourable Member for...
Now, I think this leads to the next section of the question period where Pierre starts talking about an individual named Emily. She recently reached out to the Toronto Star talking about how back in the day she would have been able to get a house, which she did with a mortgage of $2,000. But then once Trudeau got in power and inflation started raising, she actually lost the house because she couldn't pay the mortgage. And now she rents an apartment for $4,000. And this is where the next line of questioning continues.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, that was exactly the promise he made 9 years ago. He said that Emily wouldn't have to pay any more, that some rich guy would pay. But since then, his trust fund hasn't paid any more taxes. The billionaires that host him on private islands, they don't pay any more taxes. They hide their money abroad. But Emily is paying. She's paying $4,000 a month for an apartment that is so small, she says she smells her neighbors. Is the Prime Minister treating Emily fairly?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative solution for Emily is for governments to do less to support her, to do less to invest in childcare that she may or may not need for her kids, the support for her parents or grandparents who can go to the dentist now because of a Canada Dental program that the Conservatives have blocked, the investments that are going to actually support building more infrastructure in her community, whether it's public transit and, quite frankly, the investments that are going to ensure more apartment buildings, more affordable rentals, more affordable homes are being built. He wants to do less for Emily. We're doing more.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, in 2015, Emily had a home with a mortgage payment of $2,000. Now, she has an apartment with a rental payment of $4,000. How can he possibly suggest that she's better off paying twice as much to rent a place than she was under Conservatives owning one?
Here, here, here. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, how can the leader of the Conservative Party actually believe that doing less to invest in Emily's future is of help to her? He is standing here continuing to push for austerity and cuts to programs and cuts to the kinds of supports that, yes, Canadians need more than ever before because the world is a much more challenging place. That is why we're continuing to step up. That's why we're asking the wealthiest 0.1% to pay a little more, something that he is standing against, that he will be voting against because he's still in the pockets of the ultra-wealthy instead of focusing on Canadians who need it.
Now, I know I've said it multiple times already, but this guy is just so out of touch, it's unbelievable. He thinks that he's helping, but he's not. And as he continues talking about fairness for all and mentioning how he has to combat the Conservatives, Pierre brings up the fact that it's not just Conservatives you got to be worried about, because even your Liberal Premier of Newfoundland Labrador came out saying that the carbon tax is not worth it.
The carbon tax in particular, the Prime Minister has tried to bait me at times with certain ad hominems and name calling almost. But look, we have a very different opinion on the carbon tax. It's not right for the people of the province right now. I wish the Prime Minister would understand that. He's being very sclerotic in his approach on this ideologic marriage that he has to this principle. That's not to say that we don't believe in fighting climate change. We certainly do, but this policy is wrong.
Mr. Speaker, will he end his ideological marriage with the carbon tax so that Canadians can eat, heat, and house themselves?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I am resolute that I will fight climate change and put more money back in the pockets of Canadians right across the country. Any premier is welcome to come forward with a plan to put a price on pollution that meets the levels required by the federal government instead of complaining. But that is what we will continue to do. We will ensure that a price on pollution that puts more money back in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians, including in Newfoundland and Labrador, continues to be in place right across the country, because that's what Canadians need for a stronger future and for affordability.
No, I think most Canadians would say what they need is you out of office and a nice break on this carbon tax situation. But hey, that's just my opinion. Love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you guys thought about this in the comment section below. I know this was a little bit of a longer one. I do apologize. There was a little bit more that I wanted to add, but maybe I'll save it for the next video. As always, love to hear from you guys, so leave it in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.